5 people were shot and killed, several more injured at a newspaper in Annapolis, Maryland this afternoon. New information is coming into Fox, some of it confusing. We're sorting it out. We also expect an update from the police in the next few minutes, and we'll take you there live when that happens. But first, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. There was an ideological revolution on the left this week, and hardly anybody noticed it. For months, you may have noticed, members of the progressive fringe had been calling for abolishing ICE. That's the agency responsible for enforcing our immigration laws. That's not a mainstream position, obviously, and Democratic leaders seemed embarrassed by it. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer opposed the idea. So did many others. And then everything changed. 2 days ago, a self-described socialist called Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez unexpectedly won a Democratic primary in New York. Ocasio-Cortez ran on abolishing ICE. Suddenly, in days, getting rid of ICE is something many Democrats say they are for. Now, midterm elections are approaching, so it's time for the rest of us to take this idea seriously. What exactly would happen if the left killed ICE? Well, here's some of the facts about ICE. ICE is responsible for all immigration enforcement within the United States. Last year, ICE arrested 32,958 illegal immigrants with criminal records. Almost 5,000 of those were members of violent gangs. Without ICE, all of those criminals would still be at large within our borders. Last year, ICE also seized 2,370 pounds of fentanyl. That's the narcotic that is driving the single deadliest drug crisis in the history of this country. Enough fentanyl to kill every single American citizen by overdose. Without ICE, that fentanyl would still be in circulation. And of course, ICE is also the body responsible for deporting anybody illegally inside the United States. Last year, ICE removed more than 226,000 people who broke American law. ICE did that because ICE is the only agency we have to do it. Without ICE, criminal aliens could stay in this country with impunity. That would include gang members, drug smugglers, child molesters, convicted murderers. They could not be deported. Companies, meanwhile, could bring in an unlimited number of illegal workers. That would crash wages for American citizens, even more than it already has. It would be a disaster. But it's the point. The campaign against ICE is a campaign for open borders. And some are honest enough to admit that. During protests against the administration, activists have chanted this: no borders, no nations, stop the deportations. No borders, no nations. One leads to the other, always. Without borders, nations are impossible. If we passed a law tomorrow allowing strangers to live in your house, would it still be your house? No, it would not be. It would be everybody's house. Soon, it would be nobody's house. That's the left's plan for America. Finally, they are saying it out loud. We're going to pause and bring you to a news conference now underway. Officials in Maryland briefing us on the shooting. Here it is.
We have secured the building. We are in the process of notifying the next of kin. We have 5 confirmed fatals and 2 injuries. The injuries, to my understanding, are superficial, possibly from glass from the shotgun blast. We are working on now securing his residence. He does live in the state of Maryland. We are in the process of securing that residence and preparing for search warrants. So this is the next phase of this scene, and that is the investigative phase. This is the part that takes the most time. As I would assume many of you have already heard from many other police agencies in the state of Maryland and across the country, the investigative process is very difficult. We must be thorough. That's why you will not get the information from social media from us unless it's been confirmed. We have allowed our investigators to do their job. They are there now, and we are going to continue to provide you with information. I want to hold on one second. I want to share something with you that I think is important. We mentioned before about the improvised explosive device. That is not an IED. It was actually canisters of smoke grenades that he used inside of the building when he entered the establishment. So this person was prepared today to come in. This person was prepared to shoot people. His intent was to cause harm. And as I stated before, the investigative part of this is going to be thorough, and it's going to take some time. As you can see behind us, we opened up Bestgate Road. We thought that we may need to secure that roadway for a long period of time. And as we get further into the investigation, we realize that we don't need that roadway. But the building, 888 Bestgate, will be secured for some time. I do not have a time frame on that yet. We're going to be inside there for quite a bit, and until this investigation is complete. When I have more confirmed information, I will share that confirmed information with you.
You said he targeted specifically this newspaper. Exactly what was his beef with this newspaper?
That's what we're investigating now.
But there are already reports that he had a history with the newspaper a couple years ago.
That's what I'm hearing. But before we confirm that, I need our investigators to go and look into that and make sure that's correct.
Chief, does he live in Annapolis?
Difficulty initially identifying the man that you went through the process of that why?
No, I can't share that with you. It's the first time I've heard facial recognition.
Is he being cooperative? Is he answering questions?
I can't answer that. He is at our Criminal Investigation Division. Our detectives are down there with him. I have not interrupted them to ask him if he's being cooperative.
When are we going to get any more information on the suspect?
You will have the information as soon as we confirm it.
Somebody that's known to you, Chief, is it
Go ahead.
history with
Can
you?
you confirm if this suspect did have a connection to the Capitol Gazette? Can you tell us that?
The only connection I can tell you about right now is possibly through social media. I have no other confirmation.
Any of your department had any issues with this guy in the past, or other departments?
We are still looking into that. I cannot confirm whether or not our department has come in contact with him. We will have that at a later time as well.
Have you received any comment from any family members?
Chief, is he a resident of Maryland? Can you just tell us, is he a resident of Maryland or he came from outside?
No, he's a resident of Maryland.
Did he have any weapons he was looking for? You said he was walking through looking for.
That's going to be part of the investigation. I can't confirm for you whether or not he actually knew employees there or if he just targeted the business in general.
Chief, can you provide any information? Can you tell us where in Maryland he's a resident?
No.
When are you able to confirm his identity, Chief?
Very soon.
Chief, can you provide
Very
any
soon.
information on the type of shotgun? Was it a sporting shotgun? Was it a tactical shotgun? And can you provide information about these smoke grenades, if they were commercially available or military?
I don't have that information. I will
Were
find
there
out.
accomplices,
So
sir?
were all
Can you
the
say there
people
were-
shot in the newspaper office then?
I can't confirm that. They were shot on the first floor.
Deputy Chief, there was some talk about the gunman trying to hide his identity in certain ways, maybe with his fingerprints burned off or things. Can you confirm any of that?
I cannot. It's the first I heard facial recognition and the first that I've heard anything about fingerprints. We have no verification on either.
Can you confirm he has a criminal record?
I can't confirm that.
Does that have any threats against him, or any threats either on social media or directly sent to that building?
We know that there were threats sent to the Gazette through social media.
Do you have an
By
age?
this person?
Recently, by this
By-
person?
He's in his late 30s.
By this person, those threats were sent by this person?
No, the threats were sent over social media. We're trying to confirm what account that was, and we're trying to confirm who actually sent them.
When were the threats
Can you
sent?
tell us anything about the broken windows?
We're going to continue to monitor that press conference in Annapolis, Maryland. Police obviously describing the horrifying shooting this afternoon at the Annapolis newspaper, 5 dead, similar number injured. We want to go now to our own Kristen Fisher, who's been following the story and has some more detail on it. Kristen, are you there?
Yeah, hey, Tucker, I'm here. And boy, we just got a lot of new information from law enforcement in that press conference. Just want to run through some of the highlights. I think the biggest was the fact that they are now calling this a targeted attack on the Capital Gazette newspaper. Now, it's unclear if this gunman knew specific employees or if he just had a gripe with the newspaper itself. But we can now confirm that the attack was intended to be strictly on the Capital Gazette newspaper, which is a local community newspaper here. It's one of the oldest newspapers in the country, owned by the Baltimore Sun, has a very good reputation in this community. Some more information about this suspect. He is a white male believed to be in about his 30s. Law enforcement says that he sent threats to the Gazette through social media. This was a very planned and a very well-prepared attack. He came in through the building, this building just behind me, the brown brick building just behind me, came in with smoke grenades and a shotgun, and then he just went through the first floor newsroom of the Capitol Gazette and picked off his victims one by one. We know they are now confirming 5 dead, 2 injured. The 2 injured are essentially superficial injuries. We believe they were injured from glass, which was blasted out from the shotgun. Now they are going through the process, the very lengthy process of interviewing the shooter. He is in custody. We are told he is not being cooperative, and they are trying to get a search warrant on his home to go through his home, find some clues there. And, you know, Tucker, the other really bizarre twist in this story is about the shooter himself. We are hearing that he mutilated his own fingertips, perhaps in an attempt to evade or at least prolong identification. We don't know exactly what that means or how he did it. Was it a long time ago? Was it recently? But that's part of the reason that it's been so difficult to identify him. They've had to identify him using facial recognition software. So he did not engage with police in a shootout. He did not shoot at them. We don't know if he surrendered or what the exact circumstances were there, but it's very clear that he wanted to go through some great effort to make sure that it would be at least a little bit more difficult for him to be identified. And then, you know, Tucker, the final thing that everybody's really talking about here is the police response. It has just been incredible. The Anne Arundel County Police have been training for an active shooter situation just 1 week ago. They had a drill to prepare for a situation just like this, and they were on the scene within 60 seconds. The governor and the mayor have said that they went in without hesitating. They exhibited tremendous courage, and without them, it is almost certain that there would have been several more lives lost, several more people injured. But just a very sad scene out here, and really some of the developments that we're hearing really quite bizarre. A final word of caution. Right. We should be getting another update a little bit later tonight, but law enforcement is now telling us that we're now moving from the active shooter and recovery phase to the investigative phase. This is the phase that obviously takes the longest period of time, and they just urge the public and urge the press, frankly, to be patient with them to make sure they get the facts straight. And without a doubt, Tucker, the biggest question tonight is motive. Why did he do this? Why did he hold a grudge against this newspaper? Was it something that was said in the paper that he didn't like? Did he have a gripe with one of the employees? All those questions.
Well, let me just stop you and say that there are reports tonight that there is a history of animus, maybe legal action even, between this man and the newspaper. We can't confirm that, but it sounds like it's a thread that we're going to continue to pull. Kristen Fisher, thank you very much for that report from Annapolis, Maryland tonight.
Absolutely.
What a sad story. Whoa. Thanks. So before we went to the press conference, we were telling you about a political development that is really reshaping the ideological landscape on the left. Parts of the progressive fringe have been arguing for months now that we ought to abolish ICE. That has not been a mainstream position among Democrats. Suddenly, thanks to a Democratic primary on Tuesday, it is. Abolish ICE. Democrats are now saying that in growing numbers. Hemanth Gundavaram is co-director of the Immigrant Justice Clinic at Northeastern University. I think he agrees with that sentiment, and so we wanted to talk to him about it. He joins us tonight. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Tucker.
As I said in the script at the beginning of the show, this is not something that I have taken seriously, that I think most people watching have taken seriously, abolish ICE. Now I think we have an obligation to take it seriously. So I'd like to ask you what it would mean. ICE arrests thousands, many thousands of criminal aliens, illegal aliens in our country who have committed felonies and been convicted of them every year. And if there was no ICE, they would not be arrested. That would be bad, wouldn't it?
Well, we existed as a country for hundreds of years before ICE came along 15 years ago. So I think the issue is that ICE has just gotten too big. Let me give you some statistics. ICE has a yearly budget now of $6 billion. The family separation policy from President Trump is expected to cost an extra $2 billion. So ICE was not created to be this big. ICE was created to focus on national security and terrorism, and now people are being arrested who have not committed crimes. People are being arrested who have committed nonviolent crimes. So ICE is really straying from its original purpose. So the idea of abolishing
let me
it
just say
is that something else will come along to take it over.
Everything is bigger than it was. Oh, okay, so that's the hope, that something else, quote, something else will come along. But in the meantime, you have thousands and thousands and thousands of actual criminals who are here illegally, not people whose only crime is being here, but people who have committed felonies, child molestation, murder, lots of drunk drivers. And without ICE, they don't get arrested. Does that bother you?
The ACLU says that 90% of criminal arrests by ICE are for nonviolent crimes. So when President Trump ran for office, he said that he was going to go after the bad hombres, the big criminals.
Okay. But without ICE, we don't arrest anybody. So look, I understand that you think that ICE does more than it should. I get it. And that's a real debate, and we should have it. But getting rid of ICE
you're for small government, right?
I don't know. I guess in some cases I'm for protecting the country that I was born in, that I'm not leaving America. And without ICE, you have actual criminals going unpunished, roaming free. You have thousands of pounds of fentanyl that would be on the streets. Can you at least acknowledge that those are real concerns? That's not a small thing, is it?
Those are concerns, but again, there were 20 agencies that handled different things that ICE handled. Now ICE is so big that the president has power with these $6 billion and asking for $2 more billion potentially to use ICE as his own police force. And that means that there can be rampant abuse about how you use ICE.
You're the one calling for getting rid of... I understand. And by the way, I think we disagree on everything, but I do agree with you that federal agencies do things they weren't created to do. And I'm against that. So I'm sympathetic to your point there. But getting rid of the agency leaves you in the position of having to explain specifically who will arrest the illegal aliens who are also rapists and murderers. And there are actually a lot of them. Not all people here legally are, obviously, but there are still a lot of felons who are here illegally.
A very small percentage.
But the numbers are high, right? The percentage is small, I agree. But the aggregate number is big. It's thousands and thousands of people. So who arrests them? Who deports them?
But there were agencies, smaller agencies before that would do. I think first we just have to, you're sort of asking for a solution, but I think first we need to agree that ICE is a problem, and the fact that it's $6 billion, that it's, it's going after people that it shouldn't be going after. It was really intended to be created about national security.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but you're missing the point. People are calling for eliminating the agency. So let's say that happens tomorrow. The Democratic left, you get your wish, and ICE is gone, and there's an illegal alien who's been busted for drunk driving. Should he be deported? Simple question. Should people who are here illegally who get busted for DUI, should they be deported?
We have to sort of, I think what we have to do is think about abolishing ICE and then creating something else. I think, what was the question again?
Well, should someone, and the question is, should an illegal alien busted for drunk driving be deported?
That's too vague of a question. I mean, the criminal justice system.
No, it's a very specific question.
Crimes.
No, it's a very specific question.
The criminal,
the criminal
justice
system. You deal with immigration for a living. No, I'm asking, what do you think we should do? Because we're at a moment where we're remaking. It's a revolution. We're remaking everything anew. Well, let's get rid of ICE. Okay. So what are the new rules? I'm here illegally. I get busted for DUI. Should I be deported? Very simple. Do you think an illegal alien busted for DUI should be deported?
Immigration law is very complicated, Tucker. That person could have an asylum claim. They could have many different types of reasons why they might be able to stay in the United States beyond their DUI. The criminal justice system can handle crimes, right? I mean, American citizens
But no one is
crimes
going
and
to
to
deport illegal aliens who commit crimes without ICE. So you're saying they should all be allowed to stay here with their asylum claims.
Are you saying before
I'm saying if you're here illegally and you're busted for a crime, leave.
But are you saying before 2003,
I'm sorry, they're barking at me. I've got to go.
Okay. Thank you, Tucker.
No, I mean, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope you come back. I want to know what this means because it's freaking me out.
I'd love to come back.
Well, increasingly, radical beliefs are finding a home, a mainstream home, in the Democratic Party. It's all happening very fast, but it's happening. Yesterday on CNN, future Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez accused ICE of operating secret black sites on the border. For real, watch this.
Its extrajudicial nature is baked in to the structure of the agency, and that is why they're able to get away with black sites at our border, with the separation of children. Even our own members of Congress are not able to access what is happening in these states. And that in and of itself, the secretive nature, and when we know that children are being kept and that human rights abuses are happening.
David Eisenbach is a candidate for the New York City public advocate job, and he joins us tonight. David, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Okay.
Do you believe that ICE is running secret black sites that are abducting children? And if so, are they doing it in conjunction with aliens?
I don't know anything about that, but I do know that if we did get rid of ICE, we would have a replacement that would be on the ground that would be able to stop the things that you're freaked out about, like the importation of drugs and criminals on the streets.
Here's what bothers me. It's not that I think any government agency is irreplaceable or that you should never reform government. I think you should, actually.
I think that's a healthy thing for a democracy.
What freaks me, it absolutely is, and I'm advocating for it night after night. But what scares me is the recklessness behind this. People just saying, well, just get rid of it, and someone will take up the slack. Actually, in the real world, that's not how things work.
Well,
if you're the one calling for the elimination of an agency, then why don't you tell me in very specific terms how you're going to keep my kids from getting hurt?
Well, I think, Tucker, you're taking that language on a campaign trail, and now you're assuming that that's the plan when you're actually going to the policy realm, and you know that that's not how it works.
I don't know. Okay, but you're right. I'm not saying ICE is going to be eliminated tomorrow. What I am saying is that Democrats in the mainstream, this woman's going to be a congressman from New York, are advocating for it and getting elected on the promise to do it. And so that makes me think I've got a responsibility to take this seriously. Like, what are they calling for?
Well,
tell me. And it's like, oh, shut up. No details.
No. She's actually given details. And the detail is that ICE was created in the wake of 9/11 when we were, quite understandably, very anxious about a lot of things. That maybe it grew out of control a bit over the course of the years, as federal agencies do, as you know, and that now it's time to reassess that. And then we were able to do the things you were saying before ICE was created. Okay. And why can't we do it
I just
again?
would like to know who's going to do them now. I mean, the guy I just spoke to said he wouldn't say that if you're here illegally and get busted for DUI, we should deport you. It's like, if we can't agree on that, I don't know.
Well, I would agree with you.
If I get busted for DUI, I can't have a job. Yeah. But somehow if I'm an illegal alien, I'm like, oh, I have an asylum claim. Really? So maybe they're getting better treatment than I am, and I'm a citizen and a taxpayer? I'm not for that.
I would just urge you to kind of get away from all the rhetoric and the general assumptions and actually, have an adult conversation about how we can replace one organization with another.
I'm the one guy who's asking what the details are.
And
no, I'm not having a rhetorical conversation. Right. I'm like, give me the details. No, we don't have those. Okay. David, thank you.
No, but one thing I will say is that that her victory was a victory against the Democratic establishment, which was ignoring the fact that New York City is becoming less and less affordable. Corporate Democrats, their day is numbered. Nancy Pelosi.
Okay, well, I'm with her there. I'm with her on that.
You know what? We can be with each other on a lot of things.
We're out of time. Maybe so. Thank you. Well, figures like Congresswoman Maxine Waters recently have endorsed harassment of Trump administration officials. Many in the left are refusing to condemn her. Quentin James is the founder of The Collective. It's a PAC. He recently said it is, quote, tone deaf to criticize so-called direct action, and said that critics of that behavior are, quote, accomplices to the Trump administration. We wanted to ask him what he meant, and he generously agreed to tell us live tonight. Quentin James joins us. So the question, Quentin, is where does this stop? If you think it's okay to yell at someone in a restaurant because you don't agree with that person's politics, why not yell at him at a soccer game with his kids or at church or at a funeral? I mean, what are the boundaries here? I've asked this question. I can't get a straight answer. Maybe you've got one for me.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me. Look,
of course.
I think this is a conversation about freedom of speech. And I think you raised a good point, right? Where are the limits? But I think we need to start this conversation with a piece of truth. Maxine Waters did not call for violence. She did not call for people to continue to ramp up kind of, what we've been seeing from the right, actually, in terms of escalating.
That's actually, oh, wait, hold on. So let me just get factual on you here. Maxine Waters, like a couple days ago, said, if you see a Trump cabinet member, assemble a group and confront that person. If I said on my show, if you see Quentin, I don't like Quentin James's politics. If you see him out at the mall with his kids, you, quote, assemble a group and go confront him. How would you feel about that?
Well, look, one of the differences is that I'm not a public official.
How would you feel about that?
Well, look, I'm not a public official. I'm not
You're talking to me live on
policy.
TV? Well, okay. Well, sure, you're influencing policy. You've got a political action committee. Are you kidding? So if I said that about you, assemble a group and go confront Quentin, how would you feel? You'd feel really threatened, wouldn't you? I would.
But look, Tucker,
or would
again,
you not?
We are talking about
please answer
people
my
literally.
Question, Quentin, please.
Answer the question. I'm trying
please,
to. You keep interrupting me. You keep interrupting me. Look,
no,
we're
answer,
talking
how
about,
would you feel if I said that about you?
We're talking about ripping children away from their parents. We're talking about banning Muslims. People have a right to speak out against that. I'm not someone who's implementing those policies.
I'm not contesting anyone's right. No, hold on. But I'm not contesting anyone's right to speak ever. Okay. I defend it against the left every night. I'm just asking you, is there a difference between disagreeing with someone and assembling a group, as Maxine Waters said, to confront him in public? Please answer my question. How would you feel if I did that to you right now on the show, which I would never do? Would that be threatening or not?
Look, I don't think protest is in any way against our democratic values. People have every right to raise their voices and concerns for these really important issues. Again, we're talking about...
No one's contesting that. I defend it. I'm just saying,
exactly. Well, I'm glad we
yelling
agree.
at people and making them leave restaurants is not...
So we're talking about
whatever.
heckling.
I'm being barked at. We've got a Fox News alert. I'm sorry. Quentin, thank you for joining us, and I'm sorry to cut you short. We want to tell you this. This show is learning tonight, this is a Fox News alert from well-informed sources in the administration, that White House Chief of Staff General John Kelly may be preparing to leave his job, likely very soon. Now, Kelly is an honorable and capable man, one of the most impressive ever to hold that post, and many will be sad to see him go, me included. The question is, who replaces him? Now, apparently there are several contenders tonight. Those would include OMB Director Mick Mulvaney. Mulvaney is a whiz on budget matters. Does he agree with the president's core promises on immigration, though? Can he represent the interests of Trump's voters on border enforcement? That is not a small thing. It ought to be an absolute requirement for that job, White House Chief of Staff. Also on the list we are hearing is former aide Hope Hicks. Now, Hope Hicks is young and generally press shy, relatively few outside of Washington have even heard her speak. But in a White House riven by factionalism and leaking, Hicks is one of the very few people in Washington, maybe the very few people on the planet, who has the reflexive trust of the president. He could use more people like that, for sure, at a time like this. We'll keep you posted as to what we hear on that. Up next, Anthony Kennedy's retirement from the Supreme Court outraged the left. We'll look at the highlights and the action from Democratic politicians. Here's part of it.
We're looking at a destruction of the Constitution of the United States, as far as I can tell.
President Trump has said that he wants to nominate people to the Supreme Court who will overturn Roe v. Wade, so he's going to look for somebody like that.
The bottom line is this is obviously an enormously important issue. Everything to do with women's rights, having to do with gay rights, having to do with solidifying the pro-corporate, anti-worker wing of the Supreme Court. I think what we're looking for is the nomination of a right-wing extremist.
Molly Hemingway is a senior editor at The Federalist, and she joins us now. So Bernie's telling us this is the nomination of a right-wing extremist. Does he know who's getting the nomination? I hadn't heard.
Yeah, we have no idea who's getting the nomination, although we do have a list of potential nominees from President Trump. But what I think this speaks to is that people really have a lot of interest in the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court itself has so much power, and it has done so much in recent decades to really push issues even over and against the way that the people have voted, and particularly when it comes to liberal social activism. You have seen just a tremendous push by the court to overturn what people have voted on, and it means that the Supreme Court has in many ways too much power when the resignation of one person can cause so much anxiety by people on both left and right.
Well, that's exactly right. It's not a healthy democracy when the least democratic institution has the most power. But how can you denounce someone as a right-wing extremist before you know who that person is? I mean, is that a little weird? Was it always this way? Well, the rhetoric seems to be getting more intense.
It's weird. Just think of with the nomination of Anthony Kennedy back in the 1980s, which happened itself after President Reagan had nominated Bork, and that vote was declined by a Democratic Senate, and then his replacement, Ginsburg, ended up withdrawing. Kennedy was nominated by Reagan and turned out to be a jurist who advanced quite a bit of liberal social activism, whether that was redefining marriage to include same-sex couples or Roe v. Wade was a very poorly written decision, and Kennedy did a lot to save that with the Casey decision. So you don't even know what you're getting when a Republican, even someone like Ronald Reagan, nominates you. So people should just wait until they find out who is nominated and evaluate the person and their judicial philosophy at that time.
Exactly. Only Republican nominees get more liberal. Democratic nominees never get more conservative, ever.
Interesting.
Molly Hemingway, thank you.
Thanks.
It's amazing. Reactions to Kennedy's retirement on Twitter, of course, are even stronger than those on television because everybody brings out his worst self on Twitter. Think Progress editor Ian Millhiser tweeted this, among other things, F you, Justice Kennedy. Comedy Central writer Curtis Cook said this, quote, I wish this Kennedy had been shot instead of the other ones. Just another happy day on progressive Twitter. Law professor and Democratic candidate Richard Painter, who's now running for Senate, wrote this, quote, no new Supreme Court nominations by Trump to replace Justice Kennedy, none. He is in blatant violation of the Constitution and must be impeached. Senate and House Judiciary Committee hearings are way past due. I have had it with appeasement of aspiring dictators. He was clearly sweating and shouting as he wrote that. Richard Goodstein is a much calmer man, also an attorney. He advised Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. He joins us tonight. So, Richard, I thought that the critique of Trump from the left was that he was violating democratic norms. But the democratic norm is the elected president gets to nominate to fill vacancies on the Supreme Court, which Trump is doing because, again, he's president. But now we're hearing that he shouldn't be allowed to do that. So how can you be for democratic norms but oppose that?
Well, that wasn't the precedent that was followed with Merrick Garland, was it? So, look,
no, it wasn't. You're right.
I'm not saying that whether it's the Biden rule or McConnell rule, I think that's frankly silly talk. What alarms people, you know, you're talking about a meltdown. What alarms people is Donald Trump said that women should be punished for having abortion, that their doctors should be treated criminally. You had 20 Republican state legislators in Ohio today advance a position that women should get the death penalty who have abortions. So if you, any of your viewers, have somebody in their family or a friend that they know of who's had an abortion, that person should be scared to death. That they have a friend who's gay,
nobody
that
thinks
behavior was criminalized.
Let me ask you,
since
you've been always no, that's just silly. Let me ask you one question.
I defended
since it's always about abortion. How many? Wait, hold on. How many? Okay, right. Hold on. But how many? Is it a sincere question?
Yeah.
How many abortions? More abortions do we need till we get really happy? Like, what's the ideal number of abortions, would you say, in America?
They should be safe, legal, and
nirvana?
rare.
How many? But how many should we have? Because the idea is that whenever you restrict abortion, it's bad. How many would make this country like a great country again?
So I'll tell you what.
Would you say?
That's a very dismissive view of the views of women who think they should have control over their bodies. Of course, we should have as few abortions as possible.
You never met any pro-life women?
But the women who choose to go that route should not be put in jail. And if Donald Trump and these legislators in Ohio and elsewhere around the country have their way, that's what's going to happen.
No one believes this, Gar. It's too dumb. It's too dumb. Look, you don't even. Here's what's dumb. You don't even know. Wait, stop. Hold on, Chris. So Donald Trump's a big pro-life activist now. Okay. Let's just stop BSing the audience here. Right. Let's ask a sincere question. Isn't it kind of an insult to the intelligence of everybody that Democrats are attacking a nominee when there isn't a nominee? Shouldn't you hear the person's positions before you dismiss him? Or is it just anybody nominated is bad? Yeah, that's like a dumb person position, isn't it?
Donald Trump did something running for president that most presidential candidates didn't do. He said, I'm going to have a litmus test, which is I want to reverse Roe versus Wade. He also, again, said that these women should be treated criminally. So we're just taking him at his word, and we're looking at this list of people he's put out.
He's not nominating himself to the Supreme Court. Okay. And it's always about abortion. I guess that's where the money comes from, or like...
You know
the
what?
Idea is,
climate change
again,
is not about abortion.
That's happiness or something.
There's a lot of issues on which Justice Kennedy would
thank you.
My pleasure.
Noticed. Good to see you. New footage of the Las Vegas shooting shows police waiting in a hallway as the killing continues for minutes. It has been many months since the mass shooting in Las Vegas, the largest in modern American history. Even now, new information, for some reason, continues to trickle out. Key information. New released video shows Las Vegas police waiting in the hallway at the Mandalay Bay Hotel, even as Stephen Paddock continues to murder people below. The obvious question is, why is this footage coming out now, and why did the police not act for several minutes. Catherine Lombardo is an attorney representing some of the victims of those shootings, and she joins us tonight. Catherine, thank you for coming on. So the first question is, why are we finding this out now? This seems like a central piece of information in the story.
Because the court ordered the Las Vegas Metro Police Department to release all of this video footage, and pursuant to court order, they are releasing it piece by piece over the last couple of months. And as you know, yesterday we received about a dozen videos and many more audio videos showing mostly police officer body-worn camera footage. It's fascinating. It is also very, very upsetting. It shows the extremeness of the event and the trauma that everyone there, the 22,000 people who were there, have suffered. You know, interesting, in that video, I've been in that very hallway, in the stairwell, at the door, there on the 31st floor and the 32nd floor. I was there just some months ago. And what the video clearly shows is that this one particular police officer was on the 31st floor, not the 32nd floor, and he was there for many, many moments. What we find interesting is that the Mandalay Bay security officer who was with that particular police officer before the shooting started and raced through the casino floor and raced up the elevators with him, this particular Mandalay Bay security guard said that he was on the 32nd floor with that particular officer in the video on the 31st floor. This Mandalay Bay security manager told the FBI on 9 separate occasions in his interviews that he was certain he was with this Officer Hendricks on the 32nd floor. So we already knew that this Officer Hendricks was on the 31st floor, but it wasn't until yesterday when all of that video was released that we finally got confirmation that something is wrong, something's amiss. This whole thing, it's just the tip of the iceberg. We've only scratched the surface.
It's unbelievable. This is the second time in several months we've seen armed police officers stand there while a mass murder takes place. I'm very sympathetic to cops. I think they take a lot of crap, but I think we deserve an explanation for why this keeps happening.
As am I.
Catherine,
and
thank
just
you.
one last thought on that. I have a client whose spouse was shot and killed inside the venue during the 12th and final burst of gunfire. And I just want to put that out there because had they been able to
well, I mean, can you imagine? Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I hope our audience thinks about that. How would you like that was your? I mean,
thank you.
Yeah, meditate on that for a minute, Catherine. Thank you. 2 top Department of Justice officials were grilled on Capitol Hill today for trying to keep information from Congress. The Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and FBI Director Christopher Wray appeared on Capitol Hill earlier today. There they clashed with some House Republicans who accused the Department of Justice of hiding information from Congress. Here's part of the exchange.
If you have evidence that this president acted inappropriately, present it to the American people. There's an old saying that justice delayed is justice denied. I think right now all of us are being denied. Whatever you got, finish it the hell up, because this country is being torn apart.
With regard to the investigation, I've heard suggestions that we should just close the investigation. I think the best thing we can do is finish it appropriately and reach a conclusion.
Tom Fitton is the president of Judicial Watch, and he joins us tonight. Tom, when is this going to wrap up? Did we get any sense of an end date for the Russia investigation?
No, there's no imminent end date. This obstruction investigation into Trump's firing of Comey, who knows when that's going to end? And of course, you've got the Russia collusion investigation. We know there's been no Russia collusion with President Trump, so I don't know what Mueller's doing. He hasn't presented any information about where he is in his investigation. Frankly, he should be up on the Hill testifying, since he seems to be the one running the Justice Department and the FBI on this important matter.
So how did they respond, Wray and Rosenstein, under these questions?
Well, you know, they seem, I think, oblivious to the concerns Americans have about the credibility of the leadership of the Justice Department and the FBI. Obviously, under the Obama administration, it was an absolute disaster. But they don't want to grapple with with the fact that Congress doesn't trust them to turn over all the documents they have. And certainly Director Wray doesn't seem to think that the IG report was even about the FBI. He keeps on thinking about it wasn't about the institution of the FBI, but some people who happened to work there, when in fact it was the leadership of the FBI that was severely ethically compromised during the Obama administration and well into the Trump administration. And Mr. Rosenstein, you know, has a dozen excuses as to why the documents aren't being produced in a timely way to Congress. And those are decisions by the Justice Department not to comply with subpoenas in a timely way. And he doesn't have any good excuses as to why it takes years and months to turn over basic text information, why certain texts weren't turned over. And when it pressed on it, he says, well, I've got a lot of people working on it very hard, and if they miss it and there are mistakes that are made, I go back and I share your concerns with them. It doesn't sound very satisfying to anyone who's trying to get answers about the most significant corruption issue in a generation.
No, it's so evasive and unimpressive. I don't know about you. I used to be impressed by the DOJ and the FBI. This is really sad to watch. Tom, great to see you. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Tucker.
We're going to have an update for you on the shooting in Annapolis, Maryland, at the newspaper after this break. We'll be right back. This is a Fox News alert. 5 people are dead, several more badly injured, apparently, in Annapolis, Maryland. A gunman attacked the Capital Gazette newspaper there earlier today. The suspect is now in custody. WBAL reporter Jane Miller says police are searching his home. She also reports that the suspect's Twitter bio page reads this way, quote, "Dear reader, I created this page to defend myself. Now I'm suing the S word out of half of AA County, presumably Anne Arundel County, and making corpses of corrupt careers and corporate elites." He also last tweeted earlier this afternoon. Spooky. Danny Carlson is a former assistant director of the FBI, and he joins us tonight. So, Danny, it sounds just from that, assuming this is the guy, like there was some long-standing feud, at least in his mind, between himself and this newspaper.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about that. And Tucker, I don't think he came there to die either. I think he came there to wreak carnage on that place and get away. Why else did he bring smoke grenades, and why did he try to modify his fingerprints? I don't think this was a suicide thing. I think the cops got there so quick, and kudos to them for doing that. That he got trapped there, and that good for everybody, good for the victims, and good for society too.
Very quickly, but as someone who spent his life in law enforcement, when you see people on television drawing snap conclusions without any facts at all, what do you think?
They shouldn't do that. I thought that the officer that gave the press briefing today was really good. He told us what he knew, and he wouldn't tell us things where he had to guess. That's perfect. You don't often see that, and he should be commended for the way he handled that press conference. That's very important.
Yeah, I wish cable news figures would stick to that standard. Danny Carlson, thank you very much for capping it up for us tonight.
You got it. Thanks.
It's been a huge news day. Amazing. Still digesting a lot of it. I hope you'll join us tomorrow night on the show that's a sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. The great Sean Hannity is next, live from New York City. We're going to hand it off to him.